I had a radical realization a few weeks back when I saw Twitter going absolutely crazy about the return of Bleach. This realization is that I have seen all but one of the big three, and upon watching the first arc of Bleach, I quickly realized how much I've been missing out on this story. Growing up, the talk amongst my friends in terms of anime and manga was consistently Dragon Ball, Naruto, and One Piece, with not nearly as much discussion of Bleach. And I can see why. Of the big three from what I've seen thus far, Bleach is by far the most gruesome and dark of the stories. Not exactly as kid-friendly in regards to our discussions at the lunchroom table as elementary school students. As of right now, my knowledge of Bleach is relatively non-existent, but with an incredibly loyal and supportive fanbase as we saw with the recent trailer of the anime's return, along with Bleach having a ton of detractors, it has caught my eye and thereby begins our journey. Today we embark upon the story of Bleach, and I hope you're excited for this journey because I sure as hell am. Let us begin the Substitute arc. This arc, spanning chapters 1 through 70 and anime episodes 1 through 20, contained every gamut of emotion I could imagine, and within the pilot I was absolutely encapsulated within the story. Ichigo Kurosaki immediately caught my attention as most protagonists within stories aren't the edgy and sullen character type. I feel that spot is usually reserved for a rival character such as Sasuke in Naruto and Vegeta within Dragon Ball. Coincidentally, these characters are who I typically enjoy the most within the story, so having Ichigo possess this character type immediately set him apart as a protagonist compared to other animes. A 15-year-old with the ability to see Ghost. Quite a compelling ability, which adds a darker and more scary theme to the story than we're typically accustomed to, which is a nice change of pace. I personally love darker stories and scary monsters. In fact, I love gore within anime, and I love seeing things get sliced up, as grotesque as that sounds. So this is already a win in my book upon seeing Ghost and eventually monsters. Ichigo having a soft spot for spirits immediately demonstrates within the first few moments of the story that he's strong, in which he beats up a few guys for knocking over a vase that was put there in honor of a deceased girl, demonstrating that despite his dark demeanor, he has a soft spot and a clear sense of values and respect. After this scene, we're immediately juxtaposed with Ichigo's family, and particularly his father who attacks Ichigo, which we learn is a continual thing that his father does, which genuinely made me chuckle. A writing choice I personally love, in fact, is this: the juxtaposition of dark and serious elements with comedy, which is something Jujutsu Kaisen does, which I imagine they got from Bleach, as both stories have dark natures mixed with a good amount of comedy. Within Ichigo's family dynamic, we're additionally exposed to his siblings Yuzu and Karin, who also have an aptitude towards seeing Ghost, much more so than a normal human. However, Ichigo's father doesn't have that ability at all, which brings us to the missing part of their family. Their mother, who passed away 6 years ago, which I feel there has a lot more to this story than her simply passing on 6 years ago, and we're going to talk more about this because we get glimpses of this within the first arc. Given Ichigo and his siblings have this ghost sensing or seeing aptitude, and their father doesn't, it leads me to believe that perhaps their mother could have had this ability. However, right now this is merely speculation, but I have immense doubts about their mother's passing being as simple as a hollow killing her. The mother's passing plays a large role in Ichigo's edgy persona and serious demeanor. This actually becomes a giant plot point later on within the Fissure Hollow. However, despite how much I enjoy Ichigo, the juxtaposition of elements, what stole the show for me within the first arc and truly roped me into the story was Rukia. Unfortunately, a toxic viewer trait of mine is that I like to ship characters, and within this first arc I absolutely do this. I in fact ship Ichigo and Rukia together, but please don't hate me for it because I don't know obviously if they end up together or not. Rukia, with black hair, sarcasm, and immense personality and a heart of gold, immediately enchanted me with her design and her character as a whole, as she's our real first exposition to Soul Reapers. Soul Reapers seem to be feudal-themed individuals who purify hollows. They ensure the safe passing of departed souls into the Soul Society, and they protect humans from hollows as well. Design-wise, they're fantastic, and the concept is alluring. The Soul Reapers seem to exist within the Soul Society, which appears to be an afterlife where Shinigami and souls exist in a similar way to how humans live on Earth, although a different realm. Rukia is a Soul Reaper who Ichigo is able to see and interact with, as she does her duties of defeating hollows, and hollows seem to be the main monsters of this story. Hollows are corrupted spirits who devour the souls of living and deceased humans, which is an interesting concept that they go for souls specifically, as they are invisible to most humans. What drives the climax of the pilot episode is a hollow attacks Ichigo's home and injures his family, and despite Rukia's warnings to Ichigo to let her handle the hollow, he attacks it nonetheless and almost dies if not for Rukia jumping in the way of the hollow's attack. As particularly in the manga, this scene was a lot more gruesome, as it looks like Rukia genuinely has her arm almost ripped off and there's a ton of blood. This then ensues the perfect climax as Rukia tells Ichigo if he wants to save his family, he needs to temporarily become a Soul Reaper, and that she'll infuse Ichigo with her dark force force and give him the powers of a Soul Reaper. Despite possible death from this action, Ichigo decides to put his own safety to the side and go along with Rukia's proposition, and immediately upon his transition destroys the Hollow while wielding a huge blade in an amazing scene. The huge blade we learn is called a Zanpakuto, which is the weapon used to purify these souls and seems to be the center weapon of a Soul Reaper. I personally love swords, so this weapon choice of Shinigami is in fact fantastic. We learn that our protagonist Ichigo has immense spirit energy, which is demonstrative of his blade and utter aura. Spirit energy seems to be the power system of Bleach, and as of now we haven't been told a ton about how it works fully, but we know enough to confidently say Ichigo is extremely powerful due to this immense spirit energy. I personally enjoy when a protagonist is strong off the bat, and it's refreshing to see Ichigo able to confidently fight without hesitation and simultaneously be extremely powerful. From this moment within the story, I was hooked. A unique protagonist within Ichigo, an amazing deuteragonist within Rukia, along with the dark story juxtaposed with comedy and adventure. Kubo did everything I wanted in terms of connecting me to a story right off the bat. From this initial pilot, we're shown that Rukia is now inhabiting a Gigai, which is a human body vessel used by Soul Reapers. Rukia, due to her no longer being able to use her powers, is forced to live as a human, and subsequently a high schooler with Ichigo, as they together balance normal life with being a Soul Reaper and fulfilling their duties. However, apparently transferring over your power is a faux pas with the Soul Reapers, and will result in a ton of complications later on for our dynamic duo. Essentially, what takes place for the next few episodes is Ichigo and Rukia on various missions as Soul Reapers, and these episodes have a very mystery and adventure feel to it, which was exciting to watch and read. Rukia and Ichigo have this really refreshing dynamic, and watching Rukia trying to fit in so seamlessly in high school was comedic at how well she could work with this dynamic and this new role within the story. My favorite of these initial episodes and the more introductory part of the story was where Ichigo and his family, Rukia and their classmates go to a live in-person episode of a famous TV show that is essentially catching ghosts and visiting haunted places. In this episode, I genuinely found myself with a smile on the entirety of it. Don Kanoji is the TV host and spiritual medium, but he can genuinely actually see these spirits despite not handling them correctly. This episode, I'm sure, was fairly insignificant as it seemed genuinely slightly filler, but it rests as one of my favorites of the first 20 episodes. The signature of Don Kanoji is to put his hands across their chest and yell, which his fans often mimic and repeat. Rukia doing this is my favorite of those who imitate it. I'm unsure why I enjoyed this episode so much, but it genuinely made me happy and made my day a little bit better, and that's all we can ask from a story. Through high school, we're introduced into our cast of characters. Most notably, though, is Orihime, who has obvious affections towards Ichigo, and she changes the dynamic of big-breasted female characters in that she actually has a harem of women who like her, which is really unique, especially due to the time period this anime was made. Of the cast thus far, she is the other individual I feel Kubo hints at the romance between Ichigo with, as she's shown to monologue and think about him, what he's thinking, and what he's dealing with. Overall, I like Orihime a lot, but I still prefer Rukia. Additionally, with our cast, we have Tatsuki, who is our tomboy who can handle herself as she is an adept martial artist who is very protective of Orihime and honestly one of the presidents of her fan club. Then we have Chad, who fits our trope of a huge and strong sweetheart. His communication is pretty short and to the point, and he serves as a comedic outlet for a good portion of times. As time passes, Ichigo's spirit energy rubs off on other people and draws in more hollows. Subsequently, our cast of high schoolers are exposed to this ability to see and eventually interact with hollows. I personally was immediately confused how hollows weren't as prevalent as before, because it seems almost daily these hollows interact with humans and mess with them. Our cast of characters eventually increases as Rukia goes to meet Urahara at his shop, which acts as a storehouse and shop for various things Soul Reapers need. Urahara seems to be human, but a middleman between the two realms. Design-wise, he looks fantastic, and I feel he'll play a large role within the story in Ichigo's development. In this event at Urahara's store, Rukia buys in what I can most accurately describe as a gumball, which can allow Ichigo to leave his human body and have fake Ichigo within it, while Ichigo can go embark on his Soul Reaper activities. However, it was actually a mod soul, which were souls initially created to inhabit human bodies and fight against hollows, but it never got approved by the Soul Society as it was deemed unethical. Here we have our first glimpse into the politics of the Soul Society. They have laws, rules, and even vote upon things which seem to mirror the human world, which turns this at first glance simple afterlife into its own unique world. These mod souls were ordered to be destroyed, but Rukia, who despite being a Soul Reaper toes the line of morality, chooses to keep this mod soul and not dispose of it despite the rule break. As more time passes, Rukia becomes more and more human, straying further from being the Soul Reaper who was previously serious and fairly unemotional, to now someone who feels, someone who is in fact human. Her humanity is ever more present in that she is willing to disobey laws she believes to be unethical or wrong, which is a reason I have fallen in love with her character. This mod soul, dubbed as Kon, is another comedic outlet of the story and an additional character to our cast. Eventually, upon further exposition to Ichigo's backstory, we find out while paying respects to his mother on the anniversary of her death that she was killed by a hollow called the Fisher. Prior to this realization, Ichigo fully blames himself for her death because he rushed to save what he thought was a little girl. That same hollow that killed his mother returned before him and attacked his family once more. Ichigo fought this hollow and wounded it, but was unable to kill it. But Ichigo stated that he'd kill this hollow and avenge his mother. Once more, this made me feel that Ichigo's mother was more so than just a normal human, that she in fact had some type of spiritual connection to the other world, but as of now, we are still unsure. Ichigo after this tells Rukia he wants to continue being a Soul Reaper and helping others, that he wants to purify hollows. Rukia, now bearing witness to Ichigo's pain, is able to further understand why he is the way that he is. In fact, she states in a sweet scene that whenever he wants to talk about his pain, his mom, that she'll be here to listen. Ichigo, a previously happy child, after his mother's death, has carried the guilt and pain from her passing each and every day. Our protagonist is someone burdened with loss, something I think we can all relate to and identify with. Now with the resolve to continue the duties of a Soul Reaper, Ichigo and Rukia continue their adventures until we're eventually introduced into our seemingly rival of the story, Uryu. Uryu is someone known as a Quincy who is thought to be extinct. They're similar to Soul Reapers, but when they kill a hollow, they wouldn't purify it, and thereby it messed with the balance of souls in the human world and the Soul Society, and the Soul Reapers eventually eradicated them. Uryu is pretty similar to Ichigo in terms of always being serious and having a darker demeanor. He too carries a similar guilt and parallels Ichigo in a lot of ways. Despite their similarities, however, they immediately have issues with each other, and Ichigo is no slouch, taking Uryu on whatever rivalry he desires. From my initial impressions, the Quincy abilities seem pretty cool. They seem to summon an energy-created bow to eradicate hollows, but Uryu immediately causes a lot of difficulties to the story by posing bait to hollows to draw them in to compete with Ichigo on who is superior, a Soul Reaper or a Quincy. While the hollows flock to their city, our aforementioned Chad fights a hollow and somehow develops some type of addition to his arm in which he can harm and even kill hollows. I have no idea what his ability is and how it manifested, if he's a human or not, but I imagine we'll learn this later on. Furthermore, during these events, Orohime is able to see and interact with hollows, and thereby Urahara takes Chad and Orohime and allows them to bear witness to Ichigo and Uryu now that they have this ability to see both hollows and Soul Reapers. Uryu and Ichigo, while in the park, have a very poignant dialogue that quickly transitions them from hatred of one another to now rivals but at the same time allies. In the backstory of Uryu, Ichigo points out that his desire to prove Quincy's superiority over Soul Reapers went against his master's teachings, that they should instead work together. That Quincy's and Soul Reapers can live in harmony. Uryu, whose master died at the hand of a hollow, wants nothing more than to kill hollows and blames Soul Reapers for their negligence in his death. In understanding Uryu's pain, Ichigo is able to relate with Uryu within his own motivation. Ichigo's mother was killed by a Soul Reaper, but that isn't his most important motivation. What he wants more than anything, he wants to ensure that no one will have to go through the same pain that him and his sisters went through in the loss of their mother. And he acknowledges that he can't save everyone, he isn't a hero, but what he can do is try to help others by protecting them, by shielding them from the pain and loss his family suffered. This establishment of Ichigo's character isn't typical within shonen protagonists. I often find shonen protagonists aim to be the best of something, to become the Pirate King, the Hokage, the Wizard King. Here, Ichigo has a refreshingly simple goal: help others. Another poignant difference for Ichigo compared to other stories. During this giant fight against hollows, one known as the Menos Grande appears, which seems to be stories tall and is said by Rukia to take numerous Soul Reapers to defeat. Ichigo, fearing what could happen to others, attacks his giant hollow and defends against one of their attacks. In doing so, his spirit energy overflows and with the giant attack is able to wound and put this hollow at bay, further solidifying his immense power despite his noviceness. I found these events in the story propelled by Uryu to be really paramount in solidifying the world they live in. By further demonstrating the politics and strife of the Soul Society, we're further exposed to the world Kubo is aiming to build. Uryu, through his at first power differential, we learn is actually a knowledge differential. Ichigo is unaware of his spirit energy and thereby unaware of his limitless power. Uryu being able to sense Ichigo's vast amount of spirit energy just foreshadows just how powerful Ichigo is, and subsequently how powerful Ichigo will become. After the events of the hollow attack, everything seems to go back to normal. However, that isn't remotely the case. Rukia, while with their classmates, is continually reminded that she won't be in the human world much longer, and is questioned on whether she likes Ichigo or not. This scene, although pretty minor, I found significant, because in response to that, Rukia reacted with an obvious blush and surprise, and to me this is usually only done by authors when trying to indicate some type of romantic interest. I feel Kubo was really trying to put two different girls as Ichigo's possible romantic interests, which could be a strategy by Kubo to have options for the future as he's unsure at the point in the story who he wants to go with. Due to Rukia now being fully aware of her existing in both worlds, Rukia decides to leave due to the ramifications of the crime she's committed and what she fears will happen to those she cares about. She knows the Soul Society will likely come for her, and subsequently Ichigo and anyone else who knows of her, so she departs. Her departure to me was sad because she left with simply a note without actually saying goodbye to Ichigo. The realization that our story is now deviating from our mystery-esque adventure story of Ichigo and Rukia was something I obviously should have expected, and although it's necessary to the story, this introductory part of the story I'll genuinely miss. Rukia living in Ichigo's closet, watching her learn simple things like how to drink out of a juice box. They were refreshingly innocent. And as I write this, I realize how much of a role Rukia plays within the story, and I really hope that doesn't change. I know she's not the main character, but her role as the second most important character is a very fitting role as she is my favorite character thus far. Where the story really matures is during this exact leaving of Rukia, where she's intercepted by Byakuya, her brother, and Renji, another Soul Reaper. Renji, upon his introduction, is a character I found immediate distaste for, insulting Rukia's humanity, telling her of her death to come due to her crimes, and outright bully attitude made him a quick antagonist from my perspective. Before her immediate harm, Uryu arrives to help Rukia, but is defeated quickly despite his bravado in his introduction to Renji. Thankfully, due to information from Kon and help from Urahara, Ichigo arrives to face off versus Renji. During all this time, Byakuya doesn't say much at all despite his sister's life on the line. In fact, he only comments that Ichigo is the one who harmed the Menos Grande. He seems cold at first glance and rather quiet in contrast to the outspoken Renji, and I guess it makes sense. Renji refers to Byakuya as a captain and even asks Ichigo whose squad he's a part of, which further adds to this world building of this looming soul society that will soon be introduced to. Ichigo putting his life on the line was something demonstrative of his tight connection with Rukia. She had previously put her life on the line for him, and despite her warnings to hide and go away, he ignores that and with his better judgment decides to protect her. Ichigo is headstrong and reckless, but unwavering in his desire to protect and his loyalty to those he cares about, which is fitting for a shonen protagonist. During this climax of the first arc, Ichigo takes on Renji and immediately we're shown a differential in power, but that didn't last long once again. Ichigo is losing the fight and on the brink of death, but the power that exists within Ichigo appeared once more. Leading up to this moment, there was a brief foreshadowing because the aura around Ichigo literally changes. Lights around the fight begin to dim or go out, and the surrounding air begins to become much more windy. I'm unsure what kind of power exists within Ichigo, but during this fight he's able to overcome his initial deficit in strength and beat Renji, and before killing Renji during Ichigo's last attack, we're shown Ichigo's Zanpakuto cut in half without any visible sight of what happened. This is the power of a captain, it seems. Byakuya, who had remained fairly silent the entire exchange, shows that not only is he powerful, but he is so fast to move that it's almost invisible to the human and Soul Reaper eye. In what seems like a moment where Ichigo was killed by Byakuya, Ichigo survived, and despite knowing he's lost and outnumbered, he holds onto his leg, but Byakuya refuses to look at Ichigo or fully acknowledge him. Rukia, wanting to save Ichigo's life, willingly goes with Byakuya for her punishment in the Soul Society in order to spare Ichigo's life from her brother. Within Byakuya, from what I initially thought was a quiet individual with a powerful demeanor, now strikes me as a prideful and arrogant captain who believes himself to be above others. This is demonstrated in his lack of eye contact to both Rukia and Ichigo. Before Rukia's departure back to the Soul Society, Byakuya tells Rukia that he knows that Ichigo reminds her of someone, and although we don't know who that someone is, it foreshadows a possible connection of someone in Rukia's past to the personality and disposition of Ichigo Kurosaki. Here we find Ichigo, who had been able to essentially defeat everyone standing before him up until this point, finally truly defeated and bleeding out. This conflict within the story enables us and Ichigo to understand that there are far more powerful foes out there, and if he wants to fight, he'll have to get stronger. This leads us to Urahara rescuing Ichigo and bandaging him up. Once Ichigo comes to his senses in a poignant moment, Urahara tells Ichigo that if he wants to save Rukia, he'll have to get stronger, and that if he goes to the Soul Society now, he'd merely be committing suicide. Instead, if he aims to save Rukia, he will need to train with Urahara for the next 10 days before entering the Soul Society. I had anticipated Urahara playing an important role since his introduction, but I didn't expect it to come in the form of a mentor and a teacher. Further questions arise amongst the Urahara household, the question of whether they're human or Shinigami, and how these individuals in the household are both strong and acutely aware of the happenings of the Soul Society. A quote from Urahara I found to be personally compelling is that if Ichigo wants to save Rukia, he will need an iron will, and that he needs to remove all doubt from himself. These words from senseis within shonen often translate directly to our real world. For us to achieve our goals, our missions, we will need to remove all doubt and not have our goals and ambitions swayed, to have an impenetrable will. Relating these topics of manga and anime to real life is something I've always found invaluable to my personal development. My goal of reaching an endless amount of people with these videos and discussions of stories is something that I continually need to remove doubt about. It isn't about views or subscribers, or outcome even, but rather my end goal and my ambition. I truly love manga and anime for these values it instills into us, but let's jump back to the world of Bleach after this brief enamored rambling. This now ensues our first training arc of Bleach, in which Ichigo undergoes immense and seemingly dangerous lessons from Urahara in order for Ichigo to get stronger. In the most notable of these lessons, Ichigo has to become a Soul Reaper or a Hollow within roughly 72 hours. Within these final moments of his transition into a Hollow, Ichigo in some other realm within himself talks to an individual who seems to be an ephemeral spirit who has a connection to Ichigo, going so far as to say Ichigo knows him better than anyone else. The spirit seemed powerful and informs Ichigo that the Soul Reaper's abilities have always existed within him, that they were merely untapped until Rukia encountered him. Ichigo states to the spirit that he couldn't possibly be, but he doesn't finish the sentence. However, upon viewing Ichigo's Zanpakuto in this realm, the spirit states, "You must pull me out now." And I had to rewatch this scene several times to make sure I didn't mishear. But it appears that the spirit is referring to himself as the blade, so it's very likely this blade has a spirit, a will of its own, and was the one reaching out to Ichigo initially. I wrote these thoughts as I was almost completed with the first arc, while fully not expecting to find out these answers behind the spirit and potential blade, only for it to be answered within just a few episodes. This is refreshing because as much as I love One Piece, I have truly missed stories where there are actual answers to the questions we have. Within storytelling, blades are often referred to having a will of their own, and this theme is something I enjoy due to my love of swords. Ichigo eventually becomes a Soul Reaper, and in his appearance as such, he initially arrives with a hollow mask, which honestly was extremely badass, but I'm unsure on the process of someone becoming a Soul Reaper if it's usually this much of an intensive methodology. Alongside him is his Zanpakuto, which is still broken, and Ichigo is tasked in removing Urahara's hat, and in doing so, we're shown the power of Urahara. He clearly isn't a regular human, and rather an individual with immense combat prowess. Ichigo, while running away, laments himself, calling himself pathetic, to which the aforementioned spirit agrees to. Within the speech of the spirit to Ichigo, we're motivated to go along with Ichigo. The spirit's words echo in my head. They allow Ichigo to abandon his fear, to never stop. And we're demonstrated the power of Ichigo within his Zanpakuto's new form, Zangetsu. In the final chapters and episode of this arc, we're shown an absolutely brilliant moment cementing Ichigo as a protagonist I can absolutely get behind. Powerful, resilient, motivated, but most importantly human. From this moment on, the invasion to the Soul Society soon begins. However, during this training arc, it wasn't just Ichigo. Chad and Orohime were also training under the tutelage of Yoruichi, who is a talking cat, quite interesting, but they aim to help Ichigo in the invasion of the Soul Society. Additionally to their training, Uryu is also training in order to help Ichigo, which seems to be our cast of 4 for retrieving Rukia. Rukia, while imprisoned, is told by her brother of her execution to come, and notably within this, Rukia states that her brother hasn't looked at her in decades, emphasizing my initial thoughts on Byakuya's superiority over others. There's a few characters like this in anime who are so powerful, such prodigies that they view those who aren't on the same caliber as lesser than. This personally upset me because Rukia is his sister, yet he holds so much grandiose pride and distaste towards her that he refuses to even acknowledge her as someone remotely equal, someone as family. While the exposition of Byakuya continues, we're introduced to 2 more captains, Jin Ichimaru and Kimpachi, who both design-wise look fantastic. They're both captains similarly to Byakuya, but Kimpachi in particular, who isn't of noble descent, clearly has some type of conflict within Byakuya, or perhaps maybe they're just both hot-headed. I'm unsure where this will go, but the exposition of the captains is something I'm excited to see further within the story. The substitute arc ends with Ichigo, Uryu, Chad, Yasutora, and Orohime entering through the spirit particle converter machine, and thereby entering the Soul Society for the mission of rescuing Rukia. Within just 20 short episodes, I have become enveloped in this dark story full of mystery, fast-paced plot, and comedy mixed in as well. Bleach, despite being an older story, proved to me that early 2000s style animation is timeless. I fell in love with Ichigo and Rukia and the world they live in, and I'm left with so many questions, but within this story so far, it's been shown to me that these questions will soon have answers. As we enter the Soul Society to help my favorite individual of the story within Rukia, I am itching with excitement at the conflict to unfold and who Ichigo will fight next now that his training is complete. Our strong protagonist will absolutely be kicking some ass. Now that we've completed the first arc, I am absolutely hooked within the story of Bleach. If you're new to the channel and a fan of Bleach, stick around because I'm not going anywhere. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe as it really helps my channel. And as always, be greedier.